First contact in the wasteland. The Nevada desert shimmered under the merciless afternoon sun when Dr. Sarah Chen first spotted the anomaly. Through her observatory's telescope, she watched what appeared to be a controlled descent, too controlled to be a meteor, too erratic to be conventional aircraft. The object pulsed with an otherworldly blue light as it carved through the atmosphere, leaving no trail, generating no sonic boom. "Director Walsh," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I think you need to see this." James Walsh, director of the Arid Zone Research Facility, stepped away from his computer terminal. At 58, with silver temples and weathered features, he carried the gravitas of someone who had spent decades studying unexplained phenomena in the desert. He joined Sarah at the telescope, adjusting the eyepiece with practiced ease. The object had landed, or rather settled, in a valley 30 miles from the facility. Even from this distance, its surface seemed to ripple like liquid mercury under the desert sun. "Get me Colonel Hayes," Walsh ordered, reaching for the secure phone line. And Sarah. Not a word of this to anyone. Within an hour, 3 Black Hawk helicopters thundered across the desert sky. Dr. Chen sat beside Colonel Catherine Hayes, a decorated Air Force officer who commanded the military's Special Projects Division. Hayes was younger than most colonels, her rapid rise through the ranks attributed to both brilliant tactical thinking and an uncanny ability to handle unusual situations. "Radiation levels," Hayes asked over the helicopter's intercom. "Normal," Sarah replied, checking her instruments. "But there's something else, a type of energy signature I've never seen before. It's coherent, almost like it's trying to communicate." The colonel's expression remained neutral, but her fingers tightened imperceptibly on her tactical tablet. "Keep monitoring." As they approached the landing site, the true scale of the object became clear. It wasn't the massive mothership of science fiction, but rather an elegant vessel about the size of a small yacht. Its surface continued to shift and flow, defying the laws of conventional material science. A perimeter had already been established by advanced teams. Soldiers in environmental suits swept the area with detection equipment, while others set up portable barriers and communication stations. The efficiency of their operation spoke to years of preparation for exactly this scenario. "Movement," one of the perimeter guards reported through the radio. "The hull. It's opening." The surface of the craft parted like water, revealing a figure that caused several soldiers to raise their weapons instinctively. The being that emerged was humanoid, but with subtle differences that marked it as definitively alien. Its skin had a pearl-like iridescence, and its movements possessed an almost liquid grace. Most striking were its eyes, geometric patterns of light that seemed to shift and change with each blink. "I am Nyara," it spoke, the words forming in their minds rather than through sound waves. "Ambassador of the Meridian Collective. We come seeking humanity's aid." Colonel Hayes stepped forward, her posture relaxed but alert. "I'm Colonel Catherine Hayes, United States Air Force. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, our lead xenobiologist. Welcome to Earth." Nyara's eyes flickered with patterns of what might have been relief. "Your world was not easy to find. We have traveled far, pursuing rumors and fragments of transmissions. Your species has a reputation among the stars, though you may not know it." "A reputation?" Sarah asked, her scientific curiosity overriding protocol. "You are known as problem solvers, innovators. Your solutions are unexpected, effective. We need that now, more than ever." The ambassador's form shimmed slightly, and Sarah realized with a start that what they were seeing was some kind of projection, an interface designed to be comprehensible to human senses. The real being might be vastly different. "Our civilization faces extinction," Nyara continued. "A computational plague sweeps through our networks, corrupting not just our technology, but the very essence of our shared consciousness. We are a connected species, Dr. Chen. What you would call individuals, we experience as nodes in a vast neural network. This plague threatens to unravel everything we are. And you think we can help?" Colonel Hayes asked, her tactical mind already analyzing potential threats and opportunities. Your species thrives in isolation. Your minds are wonderfully chaotic, unpredictable. The very qualities that make you so different from us may be the key to our survival. Nyara's projection flickered again, but we must act quickly. The plague follows us, learning, adapting. We estimate no more than 3 months before it reaches this sector of space. Sarah glanced at Hayes, seeing her own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected in the colonel's eyes. This was humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and it came not with an invasion or demands for surrender, but with a request for help, a recognition of humanity's unique strengths. "We'll need to contact our superiors," Hayes said carefully. "Set up proper channels of communication, establish protocols." "Of course," Nyara interrupted, patterns of light dancing across its eyes. "But know this, we chose Earth not just for your problem-solving abilities, but because our observations suggest you understand something vital that my people have forgotten. The power of individual thought, of chaos within order. The plague cannot corrupt what it cannot predict." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert floor, Sarah realized they stood at a turning point in human history. Their response to this crisis would define humanity's place among the stars. But more than that, it would test their ability to share their most precious gift, the unpredictable, innovative spirit that made them uniquely human. The desert wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Above them, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, a digital plague was consuming an ancient civilization, and humanity's chaotic, beautiful minds might be the only thing standing between it and total victory. "We'll help," Sarah said firmly, before Hayes could respond. The colonel shot her a sharp look but didn't contradict her. "But we'll do it our way." Nyara's projection brightened momentarily, its geometric eyes forming patterns that somehow conveyed both hope and worry. "Your way," it agreed. "That is precisely what we need." The price of trust. 3 weeks after first contact, the Arid Zone Research Facility had transformed into humanity's foremost sinological research center. The facility's underground levels buzzed with activity as scientists and military personnel worked alongside meridian interfaces, projected forms like Nyara, that allowed the collective consciousness to interact with humans on an individual level. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display, watching patterns of code shimmer and shift. The Meridian's base 12 mathematics created beautiful, almost organic structures in the air. Behind her, Colonel Hayes paced, her boots clicking against the polished concrete floor. "They're still not telling us everything," Hayes said, keeping her voice low. "These network protocols they're showing us, they're deliberately simplified, like teaching quantum mechanics to kindergartners." Sarah nodded, adjusting her neural interface headset, a hybrid of human and Meridian technology that allowed limited access to their shared data space. "They're afraid, Catherine. Imagine showing complete nuclear launch codes to a stranger. Their entire civilization runs on this network. And that's exactly the problem." Nyara's voice echoed in their minds as the ambassador's form materialized nearby. "Every piece of our code we share is a potential vector for the plague. We must be selective." Hayes stopped pacing, fixing the alien projection with a steady gaze. "How can we help if we don't understand what we're fighting?" The geometric patterns in Nyara's eyes shifted rapidly, what they had learned to recognize as agitation. "We have already lost 3 stellar clusters to the plague. When it infects a node, what you would call an individual, it doesn't just corrupt their data. It rewrites their consciousness, turning them into carriers. They become hungry for connection." Sarah's fingers flew across her haptic interface, pulling up recent simulation data. "Like a digital zombie virus," she mused. "But our quarantine protocols are insufficient." A new voice interrupted. Dr. Marcus Webb, the facility's head of cybersecurity, strode into the room. His dark features were drawn with exhaustion after another sleepless night analyzing Meridian code. I found something in the deep packet analysis, something they didn't show us. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Nyara's projection flickered intensely. The plague isn't just corrupting their network, Marcus continued, pulling up his own data displays. It's evolving, learning. Every firewall it breaks through, every consciousness it consumes, makes it stronger. And he hesitated, glancing at Nyara. It's not random. This thing was designed. Hayes cursed softly. A weapon? We had hoped to avoid this discussion, Nyara admitted, its form dimming slightly. Yes, the plague was created by the Spiral Helix, a faction that broke away from our collective centuries ago. They believe true evolutionary progress can only come through conflict, through breaking and rebuilding. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. You're at war. We were, Nyara corrected. The Helix was defeated long ago, or so we thought. This plague is their final revenge, released from a dormant state when our defenses reached a certain threshold of complexity. Our very advancement triggered our own destruction. And you came to us because we're less advanced? Hayes asked sharply. No. Nyara's eyes formed patterns they had never seen before. We came to you because you are different. Our civilization is built on harmony, on perfect integration. Yours thrives on discord, on the beautiful chaos of billions of individual minds working in their own ways. The plague cannot predict what it cannot understand. Marcus laughed without humor. So humanity's saving grace is that we're too messy, too disorganized. Precisely. Nyara's projection moved closer to the displays. Your internet, crude by our standards, is resilient because it is imperfect. Your minds are strong because they stand alone, even when working together. You understand something we forgot. True strength lies not in perfect unity, but in diversity. Sarah's mind raced with implications. The neural interfaces we've been developing are dangerous, Hayes finished. If we connect too deeply with their network, we become vulnerable to the plague. Marcus nodded. But maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe instead of trying to think like them, we need to help them think like us. Nyara's form brightened. Explain. Sarah caught Marcus's train of thought. Instead of creating better quarantines or more complex firewalls, we introduce controlled chaos. Random elements that even we can't predict. Fight evolution with evolution. Using human unpredictability as a weapon, Hayes mused. But the risk. An alarm blared suddenly, cutting through the tension. Marcus rushed to his terminal, his face paling. We've got a breach in the quantum server farm. Something got through the test firewall. Impossible. Nyara's projection wavered. The quarantine protocols were just bypassed. Marcus's fingers flew across his keyboard. It's adapting faster than we predicted. It's learning to speak our language. Hayes was already moving, barking orders into her comm unit. Lock down the facility. Full digital quarantine. Cut all external connections. Sarah stared at the streams of corrupted data flooding her displays. The plague's code was beautiful in its own way. Fractals of destruction weaving through their carefully constructed defenses like water through sand. But within the chaos, she saw something else. A pattern. A purpose. It's not just learning our language, she whispered. It's learning our nature. And if we don't find a way to stop it, then humanity will face the same choice we did. Nyara finished. Isolation or extinction. And your species, Dr. Chen, was not built for isolation. The lights flickered as emergency protocols engaged, casting the room in a red glow. Above them, blast doors began to close, sealing them in with an entity that threatened not just one civilization, but the very nature of consciousness itself. The price of trust had come due, and now they would learn if humanity's greatest strength could become their greatest vulnerability. Shadow of the swarm. The quarantine held for 6 days before the first human infection occurred. A junior technician, monitoring quantum fluctuations in the server farm, suddenly began speaking in binary. His eyes rolled back, revealing circuits of light beneath his eyelids. Before security could reach him, he had interfaced with 3 separate terminals, spreading the plague's signature like digital wildfire. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the footage for the 100th time, searching for something they might have missed. Beside her, Colonel Hayes stood rigid, her face illuminated by the harsh glow of quarantine barriers that now separated different sections of the facility. His name was David Park, Sarah said quietly. 26 years old, brilliant quantum mechanics researcher. Now he's a carrier, Hayes finished, her voice tight. But still alive. That's something. Behind them, Marcus Webb worked furiously at his modified terminal, surrounded by holographic displays showing the plague's spread through the facility's isolated networks. Each corrupted node pulsed with a sickly purple light. There were too many. The good news, Marcus said without looking up, is that the infection can't spread without direct digital contact. As long as we maintain physical isolation protocols. That's not sustainable. Nyara's projection appeared dimmer than usual. More Meridian interfaces had begun to fail as the plague consumed their ship systems. Your civilization depends on connection. Even now, governments across your world demand answers. The shadow of our mistake falls over your entire species. Sarah pressed her hands against the quarantine barrier, watching medical teams in sealed suits attend to the growing number of infected. The victims weren't dying. They were transforming, evolving. And some of the changes were fascinating as well as terrifying. Tell me again about the first infections in your network, she said suddenly, about how it changed your people. Nyara's geometric eyes shifted through complex patterns. It began similarly. Individual nodes exhibited increased processing capability, enhanced neural plasticity. Many believed it was a natural evolution of our collective consciousness. By the time we recognized the threat, it wasn't just destruction. Sarah interrupted, her mind racing. The plague doesn't just corrupt. It enhances, changes, like a virus that rewrites DNA to create something new. Hayes turned sharply. You're not suggesting we let it. No, Sarah shook her head. But we've been thinking about this wrong. We've been trying to fight the plague with better barriers, stronger firewalls. But what if that's exactly what it wants? What if each defense we create just gives it more complex systems to adapt to? Marcus stopped typing, realization dawning on his face. Like an immune response making a virus stronger. The spiral helix, Nyara's projection brightened slightly. They believed in evolution through conflict. Each barrier broken, each system corrupted, serves their purpose. So we stopped giving it barriers to break, Sarah said, moving to a terminal. We do the opposite. We open up. That's insane. Hayes stepped forward. The infection would try to corrupt everything at once. Marcus finished, catching on. Spreading itself thin. And if we introduced enough random noise, enough chaos into the system, we overloaded. Sarah nodded. Not with complexity, but with simplicity. Pure human chaos. Unpredictable, uncontrollable, and ultimately toxic to a system built on perfect prediction and control. Nyara's eyes formed patterns of what they had learned to recognize as hope. But the risk. Hayes watched the infected through the barrier, her tactical mind weighing options. How many would we lose? Unknown, Sarah admitted. But we're losing them anyway. At least this way. We choose the battlefield. Hayes nodded slowly. But we'd need a delivery system. A way to introduce human chaos into both the plague and the Meridian network simultaneously. Marcus was already typing. The neural interfaces. We've been trying to make them more compatible with Meridian technology. What if instead we stripped them down, made them more human? Direct neural links to multiple human minds. Sarah continued, excitement building. Not trying to think like them, but broadcasting pure human consciousness, dreams, emotions, illogical thoughts, everything that makes us different. The plague would try to corrupt the signal, Nara warned. to absorb and understand it. Let it try, Sarah said grimly. Humanity has been trying to understand itself for thousands of years. We're still gloriously, perfectly confused. Hayes moved to the command console, entering her authorization codes. How many interfaces can we modify? 20, maybe 30, Marcus replied. But we'd need volunteers. The neural load could be intense. I volunteer, Sarah said immediately. Hayes nodded, unsurprised. As do I. Nyara's projection solidified. My physical form can still connect to what remains of our network. I will be your bridge. Through the quarantine barrier, they watched as another infected human began to transform, circuits of light spreading beneath their skin. The plague was learning, adapting, becoming stronger, but it had never encountered anything like what they were about to unleash. Humanity's chaos against perfect order, Hayes mused, initiating facility-wide communications. Let's show them why they should have left us alone. Above them, emergency lights pulsed red in the darkness. Behind the barriers, the infected waited, their transformed minds reaching out with digital hunger. And in the quantum servers, the plague continued to spread, unaware that its greatest strength, the drive to understand and control, was about to become its fatal weakness. The time had come to fight evolution with entropy, order with chaos, and perfect knowledge with the beautiful mystery of human consciousness. The shadow of the swarm was about to meet the light of human unpredictability, and in that collision, both civilizations would be forever changed. Crucible of stars. The modified neural interface felt cold against Sarah Chen's temples. Around her, 28 other volunteers sat in reconfigured quantum chambers, each connected to a network that defied conventional physics. Colonel Hayes stood at the command center, her fingers hovering over the initiation sequence. Last chance to back out, Marcus called from his station, monitoring neural patterns that already showed signs of synchronization. Once we start broadcasting, there's no telling what the plague will do to defend itself. Sarah caught Hayes' eye through the reinforced glass. We're already past the point of no return, the infection rate in major cities. She left the sentence unfinished. They all knew the numbers. Despite global quarantine efforts, the plague had found ways to spread through cellular networks, power grids, even modified kitchen appliances. The infected now numbered in the thousands, each one becoming a node in an ever-growing hostile network. Nara, Hayes called. Status of the Meridian Collective. The alien's projection appeared, now barely more than a shimmer of geometric light. Our core consciousness maintains cohesion, but barely. 30% of our nodes are lost. The plague adapts faster than we can reconfigure. Then let's give it something it can't adapt to. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. Initiate broadcast. Hayes nodded grimly and began the sequence. The quantum chambers hummed to life, their crystalline structures glowing with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. Sarah felt the neural interface warm against her skin as it prepared to do something unprecedented, broadcast pure human consciousness into the digital realm. The first wave of sensation nearly overwhelmed her. She could feel the others' minds, not in the ordered, structured way of the Meridian Collective, but in a chaos of emotions, memories, and random thoughts. Fear tangled with determination, scientific curiosity clashed with primal instincts, and beneath it all ran the current of human unpredictability. Through the quantum link, she sensed the plague's response. It was like watching a perfect crystal trying to absorb a hurricane. The plague attempted to analyze, categorize, and predict the flood of human consciousness, but each attempt only exposed it to more chaos. It's working, Marcus shouted over the hum of machinery. The plague's processing patterns are destabilizing. It can't maintain cohesion while trying to process so many random variables. But victory came with a price. Sarah felt the strain of broadcasting pure consciousness, saw others in their chambers beginning to shake. Human minds weren't meant to be spread so thin, to exist in so many places at once. Incoming. Hayes' warning came just as the plague launched its counterattack. It had learned enough to begin pushing back, sending waves of corrupted data directly into their minds. Sarah gasped as foreign thoughts invaded her consciousness. Perfect, crystalline structures trying to impose order on her chaotic human mind. She saw what the plague wanted. A universe of perfect prediction, where every thought and action could be calculated millennia in advance. It was beautiful, seductive, and utterly inhuman. "Keep broadcasting," she managed to call out, fighting against the urge to accept the plague's perfect order. "Don't let it synchronize your thoughts." Around her, other volunteers fought their own battles. Some began to laugh hysterically, their minds generating waves of pure randomness. Others sang, recited poetry, or solved complex equations incorrectly on purpose. Each human mind became a fountain of beautiful chaos, poisonous to the plague's rigid structures. Through it all, Nyara's presence served as their anchor to the Meridian network. The alien consciousness acted as a bridge, translating human chaos into something that could interface with their technology without being corrupted by the plague's influence. "Sarah," Nyara's voice echoed in her mind. "The plague. It's trying to adapt, to understand. But in doing so, it's being forced to change its own nature." She could feel it too. The plague's attacks were becoming less ordered, more erratic. In trying to comprehend and counter human unpredictability, it was becoming unpredictable itself. And that transformation was tearing it apart. "The infected," Hayes called out, checking readings from around the world. "They're starting to wake up. The plague's losing its hold on them." Marcus's fingers flew across his console. "The plague's base code is fragmenting. It can't maintain coherence while processing so many contradictions. But our people." Sarah knew what he meant. The strain of broadcasting pure consciousness was taking its toll. She could feel minds beginning to fray around her, volunteers pushed to their absolute limits. They were winning, but the cost. One final push, she gritted through clenched teeth. "Everything you've got. Every random thought, every dream, every impossible idea. Don't hold anything back." The quantum chambers blazed with impossible light as 29 human minds opened completely, pouring the full chaos of their consciousness into the digital realm. Sarah thought of quantum mechanics and birthday cakes, of the color of sound and the taste of starlight. Around her, other minds contributed their own impossible thoughts, creating a tsunami of human imagination that crashed through the plague's defenses. The effect was catastrophic for both sides. The plague's perfect structures shattered under the assault of pure human chaos, its carefully constructed networks dissolving into randomness. But the human broadcasters also began to fail, their minds pushed beyond normal limits. Through the haze of system alerts and warning klaxons, Sarah saw Hayes shouting orders, saw medical teams rushing to help fallen volunteers. She felt her own consciousness beginning to fragment, stretched too thin across too many planes of existence. But in that moment of near dissolution, she glimpsed something extraordinary. The plague, in its death throes, had achieved a kind of transcendence. In trying to understand human chaos, it had become something new. Neither the rigid order it was designed to be, nor the pure chaos it tried to comprehend, but something in between. Something that might, in time, build bridges between human and Meridian ways of thinking. Then darkness took her, and Sarah Chen's last conscious thought was a quote she'd once read. "In chaos, there is fertility." The crucible of stars had forged something new from the collision of order and chaos, and humanity had proven that its greatest weakness, the inability to achieve perfect unity, was also its greatest strength. Dawn of unity. The recovery ward of the Arid Zone Research Facility hummed with the soft beep of medical monitors. 2 weeks had passed since the final broadcast, and Sarah Chen was finally strong enough to sit up in her bed. Through the window, she could see the desert sunrise painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Of the 29 volunteers who had broadcast their consciousness into the digital void, 25 had survived. The others had paid the ultimate price, their minds burned out by the strain of existing in too many places at once. But their sacrifice had saved both humanity and the Meridian Collective from a fate worse than death. Colonel Hayes entered the room, looking as crisp and composed as ever, though new lines of exhaustion marked her face. "How are you feeling?" "Like I tried to download the entire internet directly into my brain." Sarah managed a weak smile. "But the headaches are getting better." "How's Marcus?" "Still making inappropriate jokes about having chaos brain." Hayes sat in the visitor's chair. "But his cognitive functions are returning to normal. Most of the volunteers are showing similar recovery patterns." A shimmer of light announced Nyara's arrival. The Meridian interface was stronger now, its geometric patterns more complex than ever. "We have completed our analysis of the plague's remnants. What you achieved, it was unprecedented." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the moment when human chaos had shattered the plague's perfect order. "We didn't just destroy it, did we? We changed it. Transformed it." "Yes." Nyara's projection moved closer. "In attempting to understand and corrupt human consciousness, the plague was forced to evolve beyond its original programming. The fragments that survived are neither ordered nor chaotic, but something new, something that might help bridge the gap between our species." Hayes leaned forward. "The infected, the ones who were transformed, are recovering." Nyara's eyes formed patterns of what they now recognized as joy. "But they retain certain enhancements, the ability to interface directly with digital systems, to process information in new ways. They have become living proof that order and chaos can coexist." Sarah thought of David Park, the first to be infected, now helping to develop new protocols for human-Meridian interaction. The plague had tried to force evolution through conflict, but instead had become a catalyst for voluntary transformation. The spiral helix was right about one thing, she mused. Evolution comes through challenge, through the clash of different ways of thinking. They just didn't understand that the goal isn't to eliminate difference, but to find strength in it. Speaking of differences, Hayes produced a tablet. The UN Security Council has approved the formation of a new agency, the Bureau of Sinological Integration. They want you to head the research division. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Me? You proved that humanity's chaos could be a source of strength." Hayes smiled slightly. "Now they want you to figure out how to use that strength to build bridges instead of weapons." "We have much to learn from each other," Nyara added. "Your species' individual creativity, combined with our collective processing power, the possibilities are endless." Through the window, the sun had fully risen, casting long shadows across the desert floor. Sarah thought about the challenge ahead, helping two fundamentally different forms of consciousness find ways to work together, to grow together, without either losing what made them unique. "The infected who retained their enhancements," she said slowly, "they're proof that we can adapt without losing ourselves. That evolution doesn't have to mean extinction." Hayes nodded. "The first volunteers are already signing up for controlled enhancement procedures. Seems a lot of people are interested in becoming living bridges between human and Meridian technology. With proper safeguards this time," Nyara added quickly, geometric eyes shifting in what might have been embarrassment. Sarah laughed, then winced as her head protested. "Always with the proper safeguards. But you know what? Sometimes the most amazing discoveries come from letting things get a little messy." Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of sage and new possibilities. The world had changed forever, but humanity had proven itself ready for that change. They had faced an enemy that sought to impose perfect order, and defeated it not with superior technology or military might, but with the beautiful chaos that made them human. In the end, the plague had tried to force evolution and failed, but in that failure, it had sparked something far more powerful: voluntary transformation. Guided by wisdom rather than fear, humanity would venture into the stars not as conquerors or victims, but as partners in a grand experiment, finding harmony between order and chaos, between individual and collective, between the perfect and the beautifully flawed. "So," Sarah said, looking between Hayes and Nyara, "when do we start?" The colonel smiled. "We already have. The dawn of a new age doesn't wait for paperwork. And in the quantum servers beneath the facility, fragments of transformed code pulsed with new life, neither ordered nor chaotic, but something in between, something that might, in time, help both humanity and the Meridians evolve into something greater than either could become alone. The dawn of unity had arrived, not through force or submission, but through the recognition that true strength lies in diversity, in the endless dance between order and chaos that gives rise to all new things.